Everything begins with an old cuckoo clock mysteriously covered in red. Suddenly, the little wooden bird pops out of the clock singing, Ryu Kong. Min puts on an earphone and announces that he has arrived at his destination. The young man calmly reports that it is exactly 7 o'clock in the evening in Korea. He observes his target lying on the ground, no longer moving, and confirms the mission is complete. Shelves full of cigarette packs appear in a dark and quiet room. Looking at his school uniform on the floor, he reflects on what bothers him the most about the country. Kang Min realizes with dismay that the worst part of it all is having to pretend to be just a student. This means that, unfortunately, he cannot buy his own cigarettes freely. The young man feels an uncontrollable urge to smoke and vents about how the craving consumes him. He thinks he should have packed his suitcase with tobacco before catching his flight to Korea. Kang Min remembers that in the past, even children could buy tobacco, but now everything is strictly controlled. Walking across the crosswalk, he notices how much the country has changed drastically in 10 years. The boy observes a gigantic skyscraper that looks like it came straight from the future. Extremely expensive luxury cars are now scattered all over the city. An elegant woman steps out of a red sports car, catching Kang Min's attention. He reflects on how the standard of living and people's behavior have risen so much. Several people around seem impressed by the woman's striking presence. Suddenly, the boy notices something very curious floating just ahead in a nearby lake. He is surprised to see a giant inflatable duck that seems to be the size of the national pride. Despite so many modern changes, the beautiful cherry blossoms remain exactly the same. A little boy runs by excitedly, calling his mother to show her the huge floating duck. The family walks happily, chatting about making a dinner reservation for duck soup. Kang Min observes that affectionate, familiar scene with a distant and somewhat melancholic look. Old memories begin to flood his mind, bringing back recollections of his own childhood. He remembers when he used to walk with his parents and thought the falling blossoms were popcorn. His father affectionately carried him on his shoulders and suggested they go to the cinema to eat real popcorn. Little Kang Min thought carefully about which movie he would like to watch with his family. The boy would then choose a very funny adult movie, making his parents laugh at the situation. Back in the present, the young man walks alone under the beautiful rain of cherry blossom petals. His calm and thoughtful expression shows that he is still trapped in those sweet memories. Suddenly, a mysterious voice calls out to him, abruptly interrupting his nostalgic thoughts. Annoyed by not having even a minute of peace, the young man puts his hand inside his jacket. He pulls out a high-tech tactical tracking device that begins to beep. Looking at device's screen, the young man prepares himself, knowing it is time to get back to work. An old sign clearly warns that the sale of cigarettes to minors is prohibited. Kang Min arrives at a simple residential neighborhood located on top of a hill. At dusk, he stops in front of a local convenience store and comments on how the place is in a high area. The young man feels like he is finally in a common environment where normal people actually live. The interior of the small commercial establishment appears quite dark and quiet. Kang Min opens the sliding door and calmly announces his arrival to whoever is inside. He enters the premises and asks aloud if there is any staff or person in charge on site. Realizing that no one is around, the boy decides to take the opportunity to wait. He approaches the cigarette counter and thinks about grabbing a pack to smoke outside. Suddenly, he hears a suspicious noise coming from behind the store shelves. A man crouching down and eating instant noodles asks if a student should be smoking. Unfazed, the young man replies that he is just doing a quick favor for his father. With an ironic smile on his face, he displays a top-tier black credit card. The young man places the luxurious card on the counter, pretending to be just an obedient son. The man behind the counter stares at him with an extremely serious and suspicious look. Kang Min tries to break the tension by suggesting to split the purchase into 36 installments. He jokes that he has watched too many Korean dramas and thought the man was the traditional owner. The shopkeeper counters by saying he is far from that. chat and reveals that he also just returned from abroad. The two mock the great coincidence of that unexpected meeting inside the empty store. With an enigmatic smile on his face, the young assassin points out that there is one more coincidence. He reveals he knows that the man worked in the exact same shady line of business as he did. Before Kong Min even finishes speaking, the shopkeeper makes an extremely fast move. The man advances fiercely, wielding a utility knife, and tries to strike the young man by surprise. He holds his blade firmly and comments, ironically, about the hitman coming from abroad. The shopkeeper stares at him up close and asks directly if he really came to kill him. Kong Min just smiles back and compliments his rival, saying he is very well informed. The man accuses the young man of betraying the organization and begins a relentless attack. He continues saying that the boy slaughtered his own companions before fleeing. The veteran states with conviction that he was sent there just to put a final end to the young man. Kong Min skillfully dodges the deadly blows and moves away, retreating down the store aisle. Some products fall from the shelves as the two assassins move at high speed. The veteran notices the item the boy is holding and comments on the card in his hands. He explains that the mysterious organization distributes different colored cards according to level. The man highlights the black card is the maximum reward given only to elite members. He walks slowly toward the boy, emphasizing that that color is for the best. The experienced shopkeeper confesses that he had never seen such a card in person before. The young man snaps his fingers and says it is an honor to receive praise from a true veteran. The experienced warrior's gaze grows even colder upon noticing the boy's relaxed posture. Kong Min stretches calmly, showing no fear of that dangerous situation. He raises his hands and reveals that his weapons were confiscated by airport security. The veteran says he is disappointed to see that a black card holder was so careless. With agility, the shopkeeper breaks a piece of the utility knife's blade. To start the combat, he throws the metal fragment toward Kong Min's eyes. Citing the first rule, the boy blocks the attack at the last second and recites the second essential rule. The man takes advantage of the moment of distraction to launch a surprise attack from above. The two trade violent attacks, and a bright spark cuts through the air of the dark store. Product packaging flies in every direction with the devastating force of the confrontation. Gasping and angry, the veteran questions the true motive behind that betrayal. He grabs his opponent's arm and demands to know why he abandoned the powerful organization. The man emphasizes that someone with his skills and history had everything he wanted. He points to the messy floor and asks again what led him to make this decision. Kong Min remains silent for a brief moment before giving his unusual answer. He points calmly to a can of food on the shelf behind the man. The young man explains that living in that repetitive way every day was too exhausting. He vents, saying that he felt completely suffocated and trapped inside a can. The veteran lunges into another quick attack, trying to end the fight for good. However, the boy defends himself using an improvised object he grabbed from the shelf. Several pieces of food fall to the floor after the precise impact of that new attack. Kong Min holds the sharp metal lid of a can and compliments the metaphor he used. The shopkeeper mocks the comment, asking if the young man took creative writing classes. He adopts an even more aggressive stance, stating that the boy knows the reality. The lethal blows collide again, generating intense sparks that illuminate the room. The man describes the terrible life of a hunting dog that only follows blind orders. He completes it by saying that this cruel fate with no choice lasts until the day of his passing. With eyes burning with fury, the veteran reveals what he really wanted in the past. The shopkeeper shouts that all he was looking for was his own freedom. Kong Min dodges masterfully from a deadly strike that passes very close. The man attempts one last desperate cut to try to hit his young rival. A line of white light crosses the air, indicating that a decisive attack has occurred. Kong Min appears right behind his opponent with red stains on his suit. The sharp metal lid fastener appears completely stained with fresh red. The young man comments coldly that the man must have gained something in exchange for his freedom. With his neck bleeding, the veteran reveals with pride that he gained a family. He shares that the organization killed all his loved ones as soon as it learned of the betrayal. Kong Min listens to the tragic account with an extremely serious and gloomy look. The man explains that the organization keeps the relatives of everyone under constant surveillance. According to him, this is the only way the agency has found to prevent new betrayals. The veteran advances, dealing blows while explaining that the agency holds them hostage. A large cloud of white dust explodes in the middle of the easel during the clash. The picture frame on the shelf falls sideways, reflecting the destruction of the combat. The man admits with sadness that he regrets his past choices bitterly. The frame's glass breaks completely with the violent impact of a kick. Kong Min hears the vent, knowing that now it is too late for any regret. The veteran feels the wound in his chest start to bleed uncontrollably. He laments having paid for his own freedom, with the lives of all the people he loved most fallen on the floor. The man smiles maniacally and says the boy got off easy. Kong Min asks with disdain if he really moved on knowing about the sacrifice. The young man looks with contempt at his opponent fallen on the floor, who continues to speak without stopping. The boy says that hearing all those lamentations, cheap excuses, makes him irritated. The shopkeeper recalls in a flashback visiting the old and tired owner of that place. Concerned about the elderly man's health, the assassin used to advise him to take a break. He always asked the old gentleman to close the store's doors and rest a little. However, the answer he received from the elderly man always left him very thoughtful. The old man would say, smiling, that he could not rest because he needed to support his family. The veteran thought that attitude was the perfect example of a good, hardworking man, a husband totally dedicated, who spent his health for his sick wife and children. He dedicated every second of his simple life to keeping that small business afloat. Back in the present, the boy observes the silence through the windows of the empty store. The shopkeeper remembers the day he found the elderly man passed away sitting in his own chair. He reveals that this tragic event was the main reason that made him decide to take up the business. Kang Min admits coldly that all that talk about sacrifice makes him furious. Boy finds it absurd to think that suffering and erasing oneself for others is the same as being happy. He questions if the shopkeeper really believed he was protecting anyone with that. Suddenly, a suspicious sound on the ceiling catches the elite assassin's immediate attention. The veteran accuses the young man of living only as a blind hunting dog in the service of others. He decides to give one final piece of advice as an experienced veteran of that dark profession. The man states categorically that for an assassin, the family is their own life. The young man just observes the ceiling calmly, knowing that the real danger is about to crash down. A large structure suddenly collapses, spreading debris and dust throughout the store. Kong Min protects his face while the veteran shouts, "It is better to pass away than to live trapped." The boy prepares quickly as he sees his opponent advance with the last strength he has left. The shopkeeper attempts a final attack, jumping with the utility knife in hand in a desperate manner. He smiles insanely and repeats that he would rather cut his own throat than wear a collar. The blow hits empty air, and the man realizes, startled, that his target has disappeared from in front of him. Kong Min appears to the side, commenting with disdain that the small blade he used was too short. He passes by the injured opponent calmly, revealing that he used the weapon only to strike his neck. The shopkeeper tries to say something, while his life fades away through his mortal wound. He is shocked to see the boy holding the small blade between his fingers. The veteran wonders desperately how the rival managed to hit him in that way. Kong Min remembers the rule about collecting one's own projectiles after a throw. He points out that the man should have paid attention to where the blade fragment fell. The young man recites the third rule, which teaches never to throw one's own armaments carelessly. The combat knives lie inert in a pool of red on the establishment's floor. On his knees, the shopkeeper laments, having been defeated by a mere piece of metal. He questions if the young man was just playing during the entire intense fight from before. The boy denies it and explains that he only needed to understand the real reasons for that betrayal. Kang Min states coldly that his brutal actions never had any personal intention. The veteran realizes too late the abyss of skill that separated them in that duel. The shopkeeper believes the boy was sent by the agency, but he warns that his rival is mistaken. He approaches the man fallen on the floor and reveals that his true purpose in the country is different. The boy says in his ear that he did not travel to South Korea because of him. He explains that he just decided to pass by there because the establishment was in his way. The young man says that his main true goal in the country is someone much more important. It is an extremely special person for whom he is willing to risk his life. Kang Min reminds the dying veteran of his desire to achieve freedom. The weapons covered in red mark the final end of that violent battle. The young man says goodbye, wishing that the man has finally found his eternal peace. The cuckoo clock on the wall continues to work normally amidst the grim scene. The little wooden bird comes out of the house, emitting its characteristic sound. Kang Min goes out to the street and announces over the communicator that the minor job has been completed. He lights a cigarette and assesses that the combat served as a great preliminary warm-up. Night approaching, the boy decides that it is time to start acting for real. He starts walking, focused toward the whereabouts of his true assassination target. The young man observes the vastness of the city under the reddish sky of the Korean dusk. He knows the job will be easy but laments needing to buy another clean school uniform. The young man looks fixedly at the horizon, thinking about the important day he will have tomorrow. The scene cuts to the beginning of the elimination operation planned to take place at the school. The sign of the renowned Anil High School appears under the clear sky. Several students are sitting at their respective desks, paying attention to class. A beautiful girl with long black hair observes the normal activity of the classroom. Suddenly, the door slides open, catching the immediate attention of all the students present. The teacher writes on the green chalkboard, while a new student in a suit appears at the entrance. The young man introduces himself to his new classmates, commenting that he does not yet have his documents. Kang Min smiles at the class and asks, in a bold way, if anyone there can lend him a cigarette. It all began 1 month ago at the luxurious residence of the influential Congressman Manuel Santos. The young assassin Ru Kang Min observes the scene calmly and finds the situation quite unexpected. He finds himself surrounded by dozens of armed guards and wonders why there is so much security. With a weapon in hand, the young man ironically suggests that his target walk alone to his own grave. Congressman Manuel Santos watches the intruder with an extremely cold and defiant look. The man accepts his grim fate, but sets one condition before the execution takes place. He demands that the assassin spare the life of his family, who are watching everything in despair. The wife hugs their young son, trying to calm him down while they both cry in terror. The politician emphasizes that his family members have absolutely no connection to his business dealings. He begs for the hostages to be released first, and the young man reflects on the request. Kang Min accepts the demand without hesitation and allows the woman and the child to leave there alive. The young man guarantees that he never hurts any innocent person other than his true contract target. He smiles enigmatically, revealing that this is his only and unbreakable rule of conduct. The congressman feigns relief upon hearing the young man's words, but hides a treacherous plan. Suddenly, he orders all of his elite guards to aim their weapons and fire without mercy. The young man maintains a calm gaze, disdaining the amateur and cowardly mindset of that politician. The congressman smiles victoriously, believing the intruder was a member of the legendary Bathala. The scene cuts to the luxurious Bathala Hotel and Casino, shining brightly into the night. It is a secret location where elite gamblers and billionaires from all over the world gather. From the outside, the luxury establishment appears to be just a standard high-end casino. However, the hall hides a very special table reserved for dangerous business. A powerful client comments on the audacity of accepting death contracts so openly. The beautiful blonde croupier states that the casino's operations are far beyond the reach of the government. The client admits that the place's reputation as the best in the assassination industry is no exaggeration. He wants absolute certainty that the target will be eliminated, and the woman confirms their effectiveness. She spreads the playing cards on the table, guaranteeing that the establishment has the best hired hands. The croupier asks the man to choose one of the cards to define who will do the job. The mysterious client states that he already knows the rules regarding the rankings of each assassin. He observes the options with great attention before making his final decision. The man places his finger on the Ace of Spades card, choosing the elite operative. The woman praises the excellent choice, pointing out that he is the best warrior available. She emphasizes that the services of the legendary Ace of Spades come with an extremely high fee. The client reveals several boxes filled with gold chips, showing that money is not an issue. He demands that the job be started immediately, holding the card that sealed the target's fate. Back at the congressman's mansion, we see the table now stained with plenty of blood from the combat. Kang Min calmly lights a cigarette with his lighter after eliminating everyone around him. Dozens of armed guards appear lying lifeless across the floor of the residence's courtyard. The congressman's wife hugs her son, terrified by the massacre she just witnessed. The boy walks past the two in silence and offers his sincere apologies for her loss. The lifeless body of Congressman Manuel Santos appears thrown against the back wall. Back to the present, the scene returns to the sunny courtyard of the high school. Kang Min enters the classroom, claiming to his new classmates that he does not have an ID yet. The young man leans on the chalkboard and boldly asks if anyone there has any cigarettes to lend him. The experienced teacher adjusts his glasses, completely bewildered by the new student's attitude. He demands respect for his authority, while the other students whisper in fear. With a very confident posture, the boy prepares to give his formal introduction. He tells the class his name is Ryu Kang Min, concealing his true identity as an assassin. The young man invents that he came from another distant city to try not to raise any suspicions. He pretends to be just another normal student focused on getting into a good college. The legendary hired gun, Ace of Spades, now begins his mission. Infiltrated as a high schooler, he thinks that carrying out flashy assassinations would be impossible in a country with such good security. But according to the dark-haired young man, that is just the naive thinking of his parents. In truth, he just wants to pretend to be a normal student so he can enjoy his school days. The boy decides he will try to get along with all of his new classmates before eliminating his target. The memory of the mysterious casino resurfaces with its bright lights and empty game tables. The blonde croupier reveals that the target to be eliminated is of Korean nationality and currently resides in Seoul. Sitting in his armchair, the young man accepts the challenge of traveling to Korea, but ponders the details. He warns the woman that there is an extremely complicated detail in the planning of this mission. The mystery is that the organization simply has no idea who the person he must eliminate is. Kang Min is completely bewildered and complains about how that secret mission seems to make no sense. The woman hands him a craft envelope, stating that the client sent only the target's name. The boy widens his eyes upon realizing that there is no other personal information. She confirms the total lack of data, showing the official documents from the secret Bethalid agency. The young man reads the document, analyzing the risks of having to hunt a man with only a first name. His dark, deep eyes reveal that he is already mentally calculating his plan. However, he finds the challenge very interesting and begins his preliminary investigations. He discovers that the mysterious man he must track down studies in the exact same room. Kang Min walks decisively toward the classroom door to finally begin his surveillance. The sign indicates the corresponding room, but he soon encounters a major obstacle. He discovers that his target has mysteriously stopped attending classes at that institution. The young man spies through the crack of the sliding door, observing the hostile behavior of the other students. He focuses his attentive gaze on an empty school desk located right next to the window. Upon entering the hallway, the young assassin encounters some bullies blocking the way. The bully with a tattooed body starts to humiliate and push another student against the wall. Kang Min does not care about the fight and simply squeezes through the middle of that chaos. The assaulted boy falls to the floor with great force, while the aggressors laugh at the situation. The newcomer grumbles jokingly, asking if the automatic door is broken, making others laugh at him. The beautiful long-haired girl hears the funny comment and smiles, finding it amusing. She points to the young man and explains to her friends that he is the new transfer student. The group of the delinquents approaches him, asking why he is alone in the hallway. The newcomer just gives an enigmatic smile, claiming that he does not have any friends at school yet. Faced with that dangerous situation, the young man realizes it is the perfect time to move to Plan B. In the back courtyard, he decides to relax a little by lighting his habitual cigarette. Suddenly, the young man starts laughing in a very exaggerated way to pretend to be an ordinary kid. The delinquents observe his strange way of smoking and admit they find him quite cute. The group leader crouches next to him and confirms if he really came from another city. He smiles confidently and says he is a true native of that distant region of Daejeon. The young man knows he needs allies and decides the moment has come to create his new persona. He invents lying stories about the wild parties at his former fictional school. The girl listens to everything fascinated and concludes that the newcomer was a big boss at his previous high school. The group leader laughs quite a bit at the story and concludes that this calm guy has a history. He extends his hand with sympathy, proposing that they all be great companions from now on. Kang Min accepts the handshake, knowing that these delinquents will be his first contacts. The group of students starts walking together. Crossing the crosswalk at sunset, the young assassin walks in front of everyone, demonstrating an imposing and determined posture. His new companions ask him if he is going straight to his private evening classes. The young man sighs, discouraged, grumbling that he actually has no desire to study at all. He watches his companions board the school bus, while the leader wishes him good luck. Kang Min stands on the sidewalk, watching the large yellow vehicle pull away slowly. He adjusts his red tie, focused on the dangerous mission that awaits him the next day. Kang Min remembers his childhood, calling desperately for his parents inside a dark car. The little boy was crying alone and huddled in fear, not knowing what would happen to him. Suddenly, some man ordered the boy to be put on a boat immediately. He ended up locked in a dark cabin. Very afraid of that cruel fate, the kidnappers decided to send the child to the mysterious Angelo's organization. He thinks that if it were not for that terrible incident in the past, everything would be different. His normal life as a student would be a reality now and not just a disguise. Suddenly, the girl loses her balance and holds firmly onto his arm, so she does not fall to the ground. She smiles, relieved, saying that she almost took a bad tumble right there in the middle of the street. Some classmates appear, calling for them and interrupting that moment alone. The other boy asks if she is going home, and she explains that she is exhausted from the first day of school. The young woman gives a mischievous smile with ulterior motives while planning something. The boy is confused when she suggests that the two of them should go somewhere to relax. The two end up entering a room with very striking pink lighting. Kang Min is impressed by the comfort of that place, which has very cozy lights. He compliments the softness of the bed but gets scared when he sees the girl taking off her coat. Suddenly, she agrees with a smile and continues, undressing calmly in front of him in the room. The girl shows that there is a giant television and a modern video game to play there. She also points to a shelf full of instant noodles in case he feels hungry later. The young woman displays a mysterious smile full of ulterior motives that seems like a trap. She whispers provocatively that he can also eat something much tastier. The girl gets on the bed, throwing her clothes on the floor, and tells him to choose what he wants to do first. She approaches very provocatively, asking where the young man wishes to start that night. The protagonist is paralyzed and realizes he has fallen into a terrible planned scam. Suddenly, several delinquents appear, taking pictures of them with cell phones to extort him. The criminals burst into laughter. Finding that ridiculous situation amusing, they record Kang Min's face and mock him, saying he must be dying of fear. The girl also starts laughing loudly and asks her accomplices if she acted well in the trap. A strong man with tattoos on his arm says that question should actually be his. The bully stares at him closely, calling him by his full name and mentioning his hometown. He asks if the boy knows Lee Sung-won, revealing an old connection. The delinquent says that Sung-won was furious and drank a lot when he heard about his transfer. The leader of the delinquents decides to reveal a humiliating secret about their mutual acquaintance. He mocks him, saying the rival cannot handle his liquor because he has had an illness since he was a child. The guy reveals that he called the rival and he said he did not even know Kang Min. They mock him, saying the disguise of the nice newcomer was an all-too-obvious attempt at a fresh start. Kang Min pretends to surrender with his hands up, while the leader dictates the new rules of the game. One of the boys gives a hard slap to the protagonist's face. Without giving him time to explain himself, the bully warns that from now on, the protagonist will be the group's personal errand boy. They approach again to continue the physical assaults and laugh at his suffering. The hoodlums start to tear his shirt to see what the newcomer is hiding underneath. They tear the back of his clothing, wanting to test the young man's physical endurance. The group leader notices something terrifying on the newcomer's back and is completely paralyzed. All the delinquents take a step back, scared by his monstrous scars. Silence takes over the room while they face the terrible truth about the young man. Those marks revealed that the newcomer had a very brutal and deadly history of combat. Elsewhere, an elite individual analyzes an intriguing mission with only one target name. Beautiful blonde secretary hands the secret file over the table for her superior to read. The man rejects the job right away, pushing the paper back to the secretary. He explains that it would be impossible to accept that, since there are thousands of people with that name. The long-haired boss explains that flying to South Korea would be dangerous after finishing the job. He should return immediately to the secret Bafala base, right after completing the mission. But he fears that moving memories of his old family could cloud his judgment at the moment. The superior is afraid of making a terrible mistake, driven by the desperation to find his loved ones again. If that were to happen, the members of the fearful organization would certainly hunt down his entire biological family. He tells the protagonist not to worry about it while holding a firearm in an intimidating way. The blonde secretary warns that that request was totally different from any other previous mission. She reveals that in exchange, the renowned Bathala Corporation would make an simply irresistible payment offer. The payment offered would be eternal freedom, so that he could finally leave the assassin organization. Shocked by the great proposal, the man lets his revolver drop heavily onto the meeting table. He asks, incredulous, if he would really have the chance to achieve his long-dreamed definitive freedom. She confirms that after finishing the job, he would never need to return to the clutches of that faction again. Back in the room, the delinquent is paralyzed with terror, unable to take his eyes off the protagonist's body. The girl and the other partners take a step back, scared to see the young man up close. The protagonist's chest and abdomen were full of deep scars from old stabbings and gunshots. Kang displays a sinister smile on his face, realizing he would have no choice but to fight them. The protagonist remembers that his personal rule is never to hurt anyone who is not his target. Unless they attack him, the young man warns coldly that that is his main life doctrine and advances against the surprised aggressor. With a quick movement, the protagonist lands a devastating punch that makes his opponent bleed profusely right away. The other delinquent tries to react, but is also hit with extreme violence and thrown far away. The girl is completely in shock to see her strong partners being defeated in a few seconds. The other accomplice screams, desperate with terror, upon realizing the absurd level of strength of that quiet young man. The young man sighs, saying that controlling his real strength in combat is much harder than he imagined. He turns coldly to the group leader, ordering the next opponent to step forward to fight. Kang Min adjusts the sleeves of his torn shirt with an intimidating look, ready to finish off the boss for good. It all began 6 years ago on the private desert island of Kamatayan, owned by the Bathala organization. A loudspeaker announced coldly that 7 minutes of the test had already passed. The mechanical voice warned through the speaker that only 3 minutes remained until the deadline. At the bottom of the ocean, air bubbles rose, while someone struggled desperately underwater. The young recruit, Ryukong Min, was chained in the depths, about to become shark food. He was the 55th recruit to suffer through the rigorous training of that institution. The clock kept ticking and reached 8 minutes with him, still trapped underwater. He began to run out of breath, while the crushing pressure made his lungs feel like they would burst. The surface of the sea looked completely calm, contrasting with the deadly agony below. Suddenly, broken chains appeared on the sand, showing that he had managed to break free. The young man finally managed to emerge on the beach with a small, funny pink octopus on his head. He fell exhausted onto the sand, grumbling that he had narrowly avoided becoming a full banquet for the fish. The young man stood up, sore, thinking that his late grandmother in heaven was not yet ready to receive him. He took a deep breath, trying to recover from that near-death experience under the scorching sun. Suddenly, the boy heard the frightening sound of a firearm being cocked right beside him. A muscular, tattooed instructor pointed his pistol, saying he had exceeded the time limit by 1 minute. Faced with imminent danger, the young man begged his grandmother mentally to at least let him choose how to go. A loud bang echoed across the island, scaring the birds that flew quickly away from the trees. The flag with the golden crest of the Bafala Corporation fluttered sovereignly under the island's blue sky. The man in sunglasses complained of pain after being surprised by the recruit's quick reaction. The boy, upside down, had used the flagpole to disarm the instructor in a bizarre maneuver. The instructor was impressed by the young man's ability to use anything around him to survive. He questioned if that desperate movement was just his last attempt to escape his fate. The boy replied calmly that it was just common sense and not a reckless, desperate action. He explained that he knew the first bullet in the revolver's chamber was a blank to avoid accidents. The recruit cocked the gun again, warning seriously that the next bullets would be real. He pointed the loaded pistol directly forward, asking if the instructor was ready. Another shot echoed along the beach, marking the beginning of the legend of the organization's most dangerous assassin. Back to the present, neon signs shine in the night of the peaceful yet noisy Korean city. In the room, the delinquents remained in absolute silence, observing their companion's body on the floor. The young delinquent gulped, horrified by the terrifying brutality of that quiet newcomer. He stretched his hands out coldly, cleaning the traces of the quick battle he had just fought inside there. He sighed with annoyance, realizing that all the buttons on his new shirt had been ripped off in the fight. One of his opponents swallowed hard, sweating with fear before the relentless monster in front of him. The protagonist crouched calmly on the bedroom floor to gather the lost buttons from his uniform. The first phase of his plan was to find a legitimate justification and not make it look like a common gang fight. The fight needed to look like a mutual confrontation so that no one would suspect his true intentions. The young man grumbled again about the new uniform while his eyes focused on a fire extinguisher. The angry bully advanced, holding the heavy extinguisher with both hands to try to crush his head. With a deafening impact, the aggressor was hit violently. Before he could even land the blow, the criminal was disoriented by the force of the impact and began to bleed from his mouth. Without understanding anything, the protagonist warned coldly that he himself did not have health insurance to cover his damages. The extinguisher fell dented to the floor, leaving the other delinquents in absolute panic at such brute force. Deciding to use pure physical strength, he grabbed the face of another opponent with a crushing grip. He threw the boy against the floor with ease, promising that his insurance would have to pay a fortune. The violent impact destroyed the bedroom furniture, forever marking terror in the minds of those youths. The girl trembled with fear, watching that scene of total destruction without being able to react. She covered her mouth, scared, with shaky lids, realizing they had missed with the wrong person that night. The bully, who was knocked out upside down on the bed, let out a faint moan of pain. She went into despair upon seeing that even the room's sturdy wooden bed had been broken in half by the blow. One of the delinquents was bewildered by the destruction and asked what the newcomer really wanted from them. The youths began to scream, terrified, begging for him to have mercy and not hurt them anymore. Kong Min ignored the screams and asked coldly about another friend who often hung out with their group. He was was referring specifically to the student from the other class, who almost never appeared in regular lessons. The protagonist advanced slowly, wanting to know where to find this mysterious boy right now. He glared at him threateningly, questioning if there was some problem with knowing his whereabouts. The youth gulped, paralyzed with fear upon noticing the killer gaze of the newcomer. Desperate, the boy tried to run away, moving as fast as he could to get far from the protagonist. He ran into the bathroom, screaming in fear that he would get hit anyway if he said anything. The bathroom door was slammed shut with all his strength in the desperation to find some safe refuge, but the doorknob began to turn slowly, revealing that his escape would be totally useless there. Kong Min opened the door calmly, guaranteeing that he would not hit him if he just cooperated. The cornered boy looked back, confused, upon noticing the calm tone of the young man at the door. Upon entering, the protagonist was surprised to notice that the youth had simply disappeared from there. Mysterious silence of the room made him pay attention to every small detail of the space. Suddenly, the delinquent emerged from behind, trapping a metal hose around the hero's neck. He shouted proudly, laughing that his entire scared flight had just been a big setup to ambush him. Without making any effort, the protagonist broke the metal hose with the absurd strength of his hands. The boy was paralyzed with shock to see his improvised weapon being destroyed into pieces on the spot. The hero warned that he also knew how to act in an action movie and delivered a spectacular blow to his rival. The violent impact of the attack threw the young man against the bathroom wall, making everything break. The water pipes burst with the destruction, spreading a strong spray all over the room. The adversary fell unconscious and soaked to the floor, totally unable to show any reaction. Outside, the girl went into total panic and screamed in horror at that absurd violence. She tried to convince the group leader to flee from there using electric scooters as fast as possible. The protagonist grumbled that all of that could have been avoided if they had just answered. Desperate to see the young man approaching, she slapped the leader several times to make him come out of his trance. The group boss finally reacted and gripped at the doorknob firmly to lock it. He revealed proudly that he used to be a promising athlete on the national youth MMA team. The bully said he was the favorite to win the championship and earn a lot of money from real fights. He squeezed the metal with fury, remembering the glory he had lost because of his wrong choices. He extended his tattooed arm, ready to try to crush the protagonist's skull with his own hands. The young assassin kept his face completely expressionless, without showing a hint of fear. He advanced, laughing with pure excitement for finally finding an adversary who seemed strong. The hero watched his opponent come at him, screaming his name with all the hatred in the world. The bully delivered a violent blow, challenging his rival to fight until one of them was crushed. A tremendous boom echoed through the room walls, revealing the insane level of that confrontation. The room furniture shook intensely because of the overwhelming force of the blows exchanged. In the next room, a young man heard the thunderous noise and complained that the neighborhood was noisy. He tried to justify himself to his girlfriend, laughing nervously about the huge racket coming from the other side. The scared girl asked if he was just going to sit there listening to all that bizarre commotion. He gave a blushing smile, suggesting that the best way to get revenge for others' noise is to do the same. He hopped excitedly onto the bed, willing to make even more noise to drown out the neighbors' confusion. Suddenly, the wall between the rooms exploded spectacularly with the body of one of the fighters. The neighbor was completely paralyzed with shock to see the brick wall destroyed right beside him. The leader of the delinquents fell defeated and unconscious onto the rubble of the broken wall. The protagonist observed the destruction, commenting ironically on the terrible quality of the construction. He knew that by taking down the boss, the rest of the gang would lose all control, and his plan would work. Yan cried in despair, shaking the broken doorknob without being able to open the door to escape. A dark shadow emerged from behind her, and the protagonist asked calmly what she was trying to do. He opened the sliding door with tranquility, explaining ironically that the sign said, "Push and pull." The girl fell to her knees, crying hard, and begged for him to do anything to her, but not to hurt her. With a slight smile, the hero calmed the young woman, explaining that he never actually had the slightest intention of attacking her. The protagonist crouched to her level, revealing in a gentle way that he would just like to ask her for a favor. He held her hair carefully, saying it was a secret task that only she would be able to carry out. The young man questioned her closely if he could trust her, and the scared young woman agreed, immediately with a nod. He smiled, satisfied with her cooperation, and decided to start explaining what the first part of the plan would be. The protagonist revealed that the favor had a direct relationship with that problematic repeating student he had mentioned before. Meanwhile, in a dark building in the city, the criminals tried to figure out what kind of person the newcomer really was. The dark staircase of that mysterious building descended to a damp basement, very well protected by iron bars. In their heady-out, there were concrete lockers with various numbered boxes and video recording equipment. One of the thugs celebrated by looking at a cell phone screen, showing that the cryptocurrency balance was only increasing. They celebrated the huge success, saying that just one of the leaked intimate videos surpassed all previous revenue. The gang boss ate raw fish on a luxurious chair, commenting in a gross way that everything fresh is much better. The henchman sucked up to the leader, agreeing happily with his words and praising the quality of the expensive food. They laughed around a table full of expensive food and drinks, celebrating the fortune they were earning online. The boss looked at his cell phone, excited about the numbers, but warned that the excess of access was almost crashing the site. He monitored the statistics, smiling from ear to ear to see that the illicit profit never stopped rising on the internet. The browser showed the secret video they had recorded to extort the victim, being sold for very high values. The leader mocked the people who spent real money to watch that type of humiliating recording online. He raised his chopsticks, proud of his own plan to get rich by exploiting the weakness of students at that school. The boss shouted for joy, celebrating the absurd success of that scheme that was yielding a real fortune. An accomplice suggested with caution that they should change heydayouts before the police started tracking their IPs. The leader laughed mockingly and assured his subordinate that they didn't need to worry about anything of that sort. He pointed to the hard drives, explaining that all the files were sent using secure Telegram accounts. He guaranteed that the servers were routed abroad, making the location of their office undetectable. The boss claimed that not even the FBI would be able to find them, when suddenly they heard sharp knocks on the basement's iron door. The criminals looked suspiciously at the metal entrance, not understanding who would be able to find their heady out. Through the small glass of the door, the criminals spotted the shadowy silhouette of a young man, standing in silence in the hallway. With a discreet nod, the gang boss ordered one of his bald henchmen to go answer that strange visitor. The bald brute opened the door with a sour face, staring down at a blonde-haired guy in the hallway. The blonde intruder wore a stylish jacket with a drawing of a rabbit holding two guns and questioned them about the videos. Without asking for permission or showing any fear, the stranger took a firm step into the gang's hideout. He stared at the group with a cold and piercing look, asking if that location was, in fact, the distribution center. The gang boss scanned the blonde guy from top to bottom with disdain, mocking that he didn't even look like an undercover cop. 4 giant thugs surrounded the blonde youth in a circle, wanting to know which gang or faction he belonged to. They started citing names of famous local gangs, trying to figure out who the intruder really worked for. With great calm, the guy moved his coat and demanded dryly that they remove all the criminal video content from the air right now. A fat henchman approached him, staring at him from above with contempt, and told the little blonde guy to lower his zipper. Before talking, the tattooed brute lost his patience for good and advanced against him, swearing he would make him wet himself out of fear right there. The other 2 accomplices laughed, joking that the room would start to stink and they would need to air out the head-out later. Suddenly, a thunderous shot cut through the air, and blood splattered violently onto the face of the accomplice who had been smiling. The other henchman froze and trembled from head to toe upon realizing the terrible damage that had just happened right beside him. The aggressor fell to his knees, screaming in fear while holding the side of his head, where his ear had been blown off in the shot. The bald henchman screamed in despair that he had lost his hearing from the absurd noise of the enemy's point-blank shot. In a quick and merciless movement, the blonde intruder pressed the hot barrel of his pistol directly to his temple. Without hesitating, he pulled the trigger again, and the henchman was thrown backward by the fatal impact of the shot. The remaining bandits looked in shock at the pool of blood on the floor, paralyzed with terror before that assassin. One of the criminals, sweating cold and trembling, could barely believe that the blonde guy was armed with a real pistol. The intruder kept his weapon gripped firmly, with the barrel still smoking after demonstrating his extreme lethality. The blonde intruder, with his blood-covered face, coldly repeated his order for them to take the video off the air. The boss tried to convince himself in panic that it wasn't a real shot, but he was left completely confused. Suddenly, a henchman went after him, trying to disarm him by force and screaming with fury. In an incredible reflex, the blonde youth fired point blank, bringing the aggressor down, dead instantly. He walked over the body without showing remorse, and repeated his ultimatum to delete the recording. The fat henchman tried to run, screaming in panic that pistol must be just a strong toy gun. He screamed to his partner that there was no reason to be afraid, but he was actually dying of fear. Taken by despair, the two remaining hoodlums advanced together to try to neutralize the shooter. The rabbit drawn on the young intruder's jacket seemed to mock the total incompetence of that gang. With two surgical and brutal shots, he liquidated both attackers, who collapsed lifeless onto the basement sand. The last accomplice fell heavily to the floor, spreading blood throughout the room and putting an end to the gang's resistance. The blonde remained standing in an imposing manner, surrounded by all the dead henchmen who had tried to face him. He holstered his weapon coldly and walked toward the gang leader, who had watched everything in disbelief. The trembling boss retreated to the office safe, unable to accept that his gang had been totally destroyed. The man tried desperately to gather the wads of money without understanding how that weapon caused so much damage. He thought about calling the police, but felt the cold barrel of the pistol being pressed directly against his forehead. The blonde intruder glared down at him with a dark look, demanding for the last time that he delete the recording. He warned coldly that if the boss didn't cooperate, he would end up dead on the floor, just like his henchman. Completely terrified, the criminal begged for his life, confirming he would erase everything immediately. The man explained that all he had to do was rip the hard drive out of the reader and destroy it in any way he wanted. The leader, however, questioned him curiously about the reason he went so far and if the victim had paid for the service. The blonde youth wiped the blood from his face with disdain and responded enigmatically that he didn't understand anything. He looked at a cell phone screen on the table, pointing specifically to the humiliating recording. To the boss's total surprise, the recording revealed that the person who was suffering the extortion was the shooter himself. The criminal was left speechless upon realizing that the young man had actually invaded the place to avenge his own honor. The youth warned with deadly hatred in his eyes that he had made a terrible mistake by mocking his physical appearance. One last shot ended the conversation, and the gang leader's blood splattered all over the food on the table. Outside, the city lights continued to shine peacefully, without anyone knowing about that massacre. The scene changed to the silent facade of a peaceful residence in the middle of a dark residential street. Inside the house, there was an ordinary, well-organized student bedroom, lit only by the hallway light. On the desk was stored the crest with the logo of the renowned Anil High School. The complete school uniform of a high school student was hanging impeccably inside the closet. But going down the dark stairs of that same residence, there was a secret and rather dark hallway. An old lamp protected by an iron grate illuminated the cold concrete walls of that basement. On a workbench were organized precision tools near the name Jang Hyan Su. The blonde youth from before assembled a giant precision rifle calmly under the yellow light of a lamp. He screwed a huge silencer onto the barrel of the firearm, demonstrating advanced technical knowledge. Next, he attached a long-range telescopic sight with precision to the top of the equipment. The young man observed his private collection of secret firearms, organized on his basement wall with pride. He cocked the weapon with a focused look, knowing very well the lethal power of each of his shots. He adjusted the sight with extreme coldness, ready to begin his next assassination mission in the dead of night. The protagonist crouches down in an intimidating way and coldly demands a cigarette from the delinquents around him. One of the thugs, all bruised and covered in bandages, rushes to hand over the pack of cigarettes immediately. Right after, the young man puts the cigarette in his mouth and makes a sharp gesture, demanding they light it for him. The other tattooed and nervous thug runs to light the lighter without daring to question his order. This bitter scene happens in a children's playground while the girl watches everything, completely in disbelief. She tries to break the strange tension and quickly asks why he gathered everyone in that place. Taking a drag from his cigarette, the guy warns that they need to finish the conversation they left hanging the day before. He recalls that the group of delinquents has one more problematic friend who never shows up for classes. Glancing sideways, the guy notices that all the thugs are acting very strangely. He asks, confused, why everyone there decided to start smoking and made the atmosphere so heavy. The girl just looks away in silence, showing visible concern about the direction of the conversation. Suspicious, the guy snaps the cigarette in half and smiles, asking if something bad happened to that friend. Meanwhile, a scene of a brutal aftermath is revealed, with several bodies lying on the floor in a dark room. The mysterious blonde-haired guy watches the destruction with a completely cold gaze. The scene changes to a shooting range where several small targets are hit with extreme precision. The girl with black hair analyzes the gun and says the trigger is working perfectly without any issues. She sighs in disappointment while holding the pistol with both hands to check the details. The young woman complains irritably about the terrible calibration of the sight and says she feels like throwing the gun into the washing machine. She asks angrily if they think they are in the army, while the delinquents just watch, frightened. In the background, she confesses that she really wanted to win the muscular teddy bear that is the grand prize for first place. The blonde young man suddenly cocks the pistol confidently when he realizes the girl's desire. He asks her to wait a moment, revealing himself to be Jang Hyun-soo, a 20-year-old repeating student. The girl praises his good posture, while the guy shyly pretends it is his first time shooting. A precise shot echoes in the range and knocks down the first metal target with extreme ease. Impressed by the shot, the girl approaches excited, asking if he is really going to win the prize. The guy starts shooting in a sequence, knocking down all the remaining targets to her surprised shouts. The other guys are shocked by his absurd skill and begin to flatter the young shooter. He gets the maximum score and charmingly hands the muscular elephant bear to the girl. She holds his arm affectionately, thanking the guy for the gift she wanted so much to win. With a loving gaze, she promises that she will definitely return the favor in some way in the future. The guy is a bit surprised by her warm reaction and stares at her with wide eyes. The girl starts spinning the bear happily, while the other guys ask her to be careful not to break the toy. Jang Hyun-soo watches the gun with a mischievous smile, thinking about the meaning of that supposed reward. He fiddles with the pistol thoughtfully, feeling the power his shooting ability gives him. He turns red and gives a smug smile when he realizes that he is very good at impressing people. Time passes, and the day dawns sunny near the busy Songsu subway station. The girl in the black leather jacket walks down the street, complaining to herself about how annoying all of that is. She wonders why Ryu Kang-min is interested in a guy like that and wishes to forget everything forever. Suddenly, Ryu Kang-min himself appears right behind her and asks why she is talking to herself. He teases her, asking if she is going crazy, and wants to know what she was muttering about there. The young woman complains that his clothes look like hers, but he just smiles, saying it is a big coincidence. She makes a bored face and asks why he decided to ask her out just on a weekend. The guy stays silent for a brief moment with a serious expression before answering the girl. He looks at her directly and asks if she remembers very well what they talked about at the cafe. The young woman remembers when he touched her face, calling in the favor she promised to fulfill without complaining. He shows his cell phone, smiling, and reminds her that she herself said that neighborhood was the trendiest in Seoul. The guy asks her to show him the city, since he is just a country bumpkin from Daejeon. She looks at him, surprised to realize that the big dangerous favor was just a simple tour of the city. The young woman gives an ironic smile, thinking the whole situation is a really bad joke. She realizes she was scared for nothing and that the feared troublemaker just wanted a regular tour guide to hang out with. The girl watches the guy with suspicion, thinking that he must just be a normal and naive young man. He gives a friendly smile and asks if she wants to eat first, leaving the young woman convinced that he likes her. As they walk side by side, the guy asks politely if there is any specific dish she would like to eat. He fiddles with his phone, commenting excitedly that he just found an excellent recommendation on his social media. The guy takes a picture of the two of them very close together, recording that special moment of his tour of the big city. Hidden behind a wall, a shadowy figure watches and secretly photographs the two with their own cell phone. The girl understands that traditional restaurant is famous, but she is quite surprised when entering the place. She is left speechless by the giant banquet of 80 dishes and asks if they are going to pretend they are royalty. The young woman complains that his taste in choosing restaurants is terrible, questioning if he has ever dated a girl. He apologizes, embarrassed, and leaves the girl intrigued by his shy reaction to her direct complaint. The protagonist explains with a sad look that, in reality, he has never had true friends to go out and have fun with. It points to the meat dish, confessing that he doesn't really know what people usually eat on these outings. The girl softens her gaze when she perceives the sincerity in his words and starts to see him in a different way. She puts a piece of food into his bowl, rather roughly, trying to hide that she was moved by the situation. The young woman tells him to shut up and eat, complaining that she is on a diet and shouldn't eat so much at that banquet. Upon tasting the food, she confesses, amazed, that the dish is incredibly tasty, making the guy very happy. He praises an exotic iguana tempura excitedly, but the girl gets scared and asks what kind of dish that is. The guy affectionately cleans her mouth with a napkin while recording everything in a beautiful photo on his phone. Next, the two decide to visit a very cozy-themed cafe decorated with plants and bamboo details. At the place, a funny alpaca lets out a bizarre and scary scream that catches the protagonist totally by surprise. The girl finds the gentle alpacas funny, while the guy tries to recover from the scare of being spat on by one of them. She starts filming everything on her phone, and the guy asks, intrigued, what she is doing with that camera on. The young woman laughs non-stop while recording the exact moment when the alpaca bites his head in a hilarious photo. Later, the two go to a modern art gallery where a famous local collaborative exhibition is happening. The guy stares at an intriguing work and comments, thoughtfully, that modern art really possesses a deep meaning. The piece of art is, in fact, just a regular bathroom urinal with an ironic sign written that this is not art. He bows before the urinal, saying that he felt a strong emotion, but the young woman asks what he is talking about. She discovers through the flyer that, in truth, they entered an exhibition fair for bathroom products by mistake. At nightfall, they go to a luxurious designer store that stands out in the middle of the busy big city. The guy keeps taking several artistic photos of the young woman from behind while she watches the store's elegant facade. She smiles and asks how long they will keep filming, but he replies that he will only stop when he is satisfied. Suddenly, he warns that his cell phone's storage is full, and the girl thinks it's strange since the device has a lot of capacity. The guy explains like a goof that he took enough photos to record her rare beauty for all eternity. Under the starry night sky, they walk near a commercial building where a Korean karaoke operates. The protagonist thanks her immensely for the company, saying that he loved seeing the best tourist spots in Seoul. But he comments with a mischievous smile that it would be a huge shame to end that fun outing so early. The guy points to a cork shooting stall and suggests that they play one last round before they leave. The girl stays silent, watching the guy with a very serious expression upon hearing his game proposal. The colorful shooting target is positioned at the back of the stall, challenging anyone who wants to try their luck. She immediately remembers the incredible skill that the other blonde student demonstrated to have with firearms. The young woman keeps silent, looking fixedly at the guy, while she prepares to see his performance in the game. The stall owner explains the easy rules with a smile, saying that you just need to hit a single shot to win the bear. The man encourages the couple, guaranteeing that the bear is the perfect gift for a girlfriend, but the game hides a secret. The protagonist picks up the cork rifle, knowing that the weapon's sight is purposely misaligned so no one can win. The calibration is so bad that not even the best marksman in the army would be able to hit a single target there. The girl warns him confidently that he won't hit anything, but he just smiles to the side and challenges her to make a bet. The guy points to the elephant plushies on the shelf, saying that if he hits all the shots, he will want a prize. He aims seriously and warns that if he wins the bet, she will have to do him one more mysterious favor in the future. The stall owner watches the scene smiling with his eyes closed, convinced that the guy will miss all the shots. But an overwhelming sequence of perfect shots starts hitting all the small metal targets of the stand dead on. The stall owner and the girl look completely paralyzed with shock at what just happened there. The man can barely believe what he sees and asks, shouting, if the guy really hit all the targets. Protagonist smiles with the weapon on his shoulder and invites the young woman to try, saying it is his first time in the game. He approaches from behind to help her support the weapon on her shoulder while she prepares to take the shot. The mysterious spy records their approach from afar on his cell phone, realizing the tactic the guy used there. The night falls silently over the residential apartment building where the girl lives in the peaceful neighborhood. Upon holding the prize she won, the girl complains in a fun way, saying that that pink plushie is too ugly. She walks down the street holding the strange toy, but confesses that its soft texture is very addictive. The young woman continues in silence with a distant look, thoughtful about the surprising attitudes of that quiet guy. She looks at her cell phone screen, thinking that Ryu Kang-min made a totally unexpected request to her. She remembers that the favor demanded by him was just to post the romantic photo of the two of them together on social media. The girl lets out a deep sigh while looking again at that photo that was already accumulating many likes. She enters the elevator, thinking that he used that silly excuse about the outing in Seoul just to get close to her. The young woman recalls his small gentle gestures, like when he wiped the sauce from her mouth with affection at dinner. She wonders if he really thought that that gentle and friendly smile would make her fall in love. In the midst of her thoughts, the girl hides her face, flushed with embarrassment, in the plushie she won at the shooting range. She squeezes the toy against her red cheeks, muttering out loud that that boy is very annoying. The spy's mysterious cell phone continues showing the cute photo of the cup that was published on the internet a little while ago. A mysterious hand scrolls the app screen, passing by the other photos that the two took at the art gallery. The spy watches the photo in which the two appear very close, analyzing every detail of that suspicious meeting. The elevator finally announces that it reached the 5th floor, interrupting the girl, who was still looking at her cell phone. The metal doors begin to open slowly, revealing the elevator exit on the floor of the young woman's apartment. The girl widens her eyes and is totally without reaction upon seeing who was waiting for her outside the elevator. The feared repeating student Jang Hyeon Sue is standing right in front of her with a terrifying expression of pure hate. The building's floor hallway becomes completely dark and silent with the intimidating presence of that guy. The pink teddy bear falls, abandoned on the cold hallway floor, revealing the despair and panic of that situation. The blonde guy warns with a dark voice that is very dangerous for a girl to walk on the street until so late at night. Without giving her time to react, the aggressor grabs her violently by the neck, asking what she is doing there. He pushes her inside the apartment and comments, sarcastically, that that place brings back many memories. He squeezes her throat with force, remembering that that was the first time he had returned there since an old night. In the past, the delinquents gathered happily to drink and celebrate in Hayan's apartment during a party. They toasted happily with glasses of drinks on the living room floor, without imagining the terrible problem that would come later. The boys laughed and drank a lot, commenting that the drink seemed like sugar water. It was so easy to drink, the young woman asked, irritably, for them to drink in moderation and threatened to end anyone who felt sick in her new home. While the group continued the noisy party, Jang Hyeon-soo calmed her down, saying he would take care of all the drunks. Comforted by his words, she commented that he seemed to be the only truly mature and reliable guy there. The blonde guy smiled in a friendly way, guaranteeing that she could fully trust him to take care of everything. Time passed at the party, and empty drink bottles started to accumulate on the apartment floor. The night advanced, and more empty bottles were cast aside, showing that everyone there was already very drunk. With the excess of drink, all the boys in the group and up and under them, fainting with a cold floor of her living room. The girl also couldn't handle the fatigue, and ended up falling into a deep sleep on the sofa in her home's living room. But in the middle of the darkness of the night, a silent shadow started to approach the sleeping young woman stealthily. Jang Hyun-soo approached the sofa, whispering Hyun's name in a scary way while she slept peacefully. The guy watched the girl closely in the dark and asked himself if she was really in a deep sleep. The young woman continued in a heavy sleep, totally oblivious to the terrible danger that was about to happen there. With a maniacal look, the aggressor started to breathe heavily and scarily over the defenseless girl. Suddenly, a desperate scream of terror echoed from the apartment, breaking the silence of that scary night. In the present, the aggressor screams with fury that his life was completely ruined because she reported him to the police. He reveals with hate that he was expelled from school because of the report and that his own family abandoned him. On the kitchen floor, the girl cries and coughs a lot, out of breath, while wondering how that could be her fault. The girl stares at him with deep repulsion, calling the aggressor a cowardly criminal and abuser to his face. Jang Hyun-soo is completely stunned by the direct accusation and questions her, confused without being able to accept it. He shouts, enraged, alleging falsely that, in reality, it was she who hit on him first at school. The guy recalls the touches he considered provocations and the moments when she promised to return his help. He insists that she called him affectionately older brother and said how safe she felt with him. The aggressor accuses her of being a hypocrite who acted in a calculating way just to seduce him and get his attention. The blonde guy points his cell phone with fury, saying that she acted the same way today with that other boy. He shows the couple's photo published on the internet, alleging that she only posted that to provoke him. He gives a disturbed smile, believing piously that she did that whole meeting just to make him jealous. The young woman looks at him with total disgust and disbelief, perceiving the sick and fanciful mind of that dangerous aggressor. The villain insists that she played the same shooting game at the stall just to imitate what she used to do with him. With a lot of anger, she closes her fist tightly, not being able to listen to all those absurd lies from the guy anymore. The girl delivers a violent slap to his face, shouting that the more he talks, the more he seems like a complete psychopath. She accuses him of being a delusional madman who needs urgent treatment in a psychiatric hospital wing. In a burst of fury, the guy brutally stomps on the pink plushie on the floor while the girl screams, terrified by the violence. The villain reveals that from the day he was reported, he started training obsessively and preparing for revenge. He draws a real firearm, pointing it directly at the chest of the defenseless young woman with a psychopathic look. The aggressor holds her tightly by the hair, warning with malice that the time has finally come to show his revenge. The blonde guy starts drooling from pure insanity, saying that he is extremely anxious to end that quickly. The young woman screams desperately for help, while the maniac threatens her without showing any pity. In the dark kitchen, suddenly, a firm hand emerges from the shadows, covering her mouth while it immobilizes the aggressor's arm in an instant. The mysterious savior holds the girl carefully, commenting that he didn't expect the villain to take the bait so quickly. Revealing his face, Roo Kang-min smiles in the shadows, saying that sending that fake paparazzo was very worth it. Meanwhile, in a dark alley in the city, the masked delinquents gather with their cell phones lit in their hands. They check the photos taken from afar, commenting among themselves about the images they captured during the day. One of the accomplices warns that he already published all the secret photos they took of the couple during the tour of the city. Another delinquent grumbles irritably at the protagonist's name, not able to stand that humiliating situation anymore. They take off their masks, complaining that besides enduring the shame, now they have to do stupid tasks for him. The guy checks the photos on the device, hoping to have done everything perfectly so as not to get beaten by the protagonist again. The thud scratches his head, confused, saying that it makes no sense, since the protagonist doesn't even seem to really like her. He continues looking at the cell phone, thoughtful, without understanding the real reason for the protagonist to make this whole elaborate plan. The protagonist stares at Jang Hyun-soo, saying with tranquility that it was very difficult to manage to locate him in the city. He walks calmly through the apartment, commenting that it is hard to believe that such a silly trap worked. The hero questions the criminal with a challenging look, asking if he was really that desperate. The aggressor maintains a rigid posture in silence, while listening to the confident provocations of the newcomer. Jang Hyun-soo asks, irritably, if he is the girl's boyfriend, but the hero just mocks him with an ironic joke. The aggressor keeps the loaded pistol firm in his right hand, ready to shoot at the protagonist in the living room. He gives a sick and maniacal smile upon realizing that he will have to eliminate the guy before taking the girl for himself. Without hesitating, the criminal makes a quick and violent shot, trying to hit the protagonist at point-blank range in the room. The hero dodges with superhuman reflexes, commenting with coldness that the rival didn't even give a warning before shooting. The aggressor points the barrel of the pistol back at the hero, shouting with fury that the girl will be his after he dies. In a lightning movement, the protagonist advances and holds the rival's pistol with his bare hands to disarm him right there. He immobilizes the villain with extreme ease, asking in a mocking way if he really wants the girl that much. The silent fight continues in the dark of the apartment, while the young woman watches everything, paralyzed with panic on the floor. The villain proposes a real shooting dispute to decide once and for all who will keep her in the end. The protagonist draws his own black pistol with a silencer in a threatening way, accepting the criminal's challenge. He points the loaded weapon directly at the rival's face, warning coldly that his pistol kills with a single shot. In a flashback of the past, Jang Hyun-soo comes across his own intimate video leaked on the internet and panics. He despairs, trying to discover who leaked the recording, although he comments in a vain way that the angle favored him. The guy in the robe suspects that the cell phone repair technician deceived him by charging very cheaply for the fix. He swears he will put a bullet in the hero's head, but a mysterious voice behind him warns that he doesn't know anything yet. An elegant man in a suit and glasses reveals, smiling, that the guy's embarrassing video is already a huge success on the internet. Jang Hyun-soo gets scared, asking who he is, while the man says the video is going viral on all the forums. In the recording, the villain appears rehearsing bizarre movements in front of the camera to try to seduce the girls at school. The intruder in the suit watches the several tripods with cameras scattered around the room and is quite surprised by that. He gives a mocking laugh, commenting that it is extremely bizarre for him to record himself rehearsing on the bed. He notes that besides recording ridiculous videos, the guy also keeps a very dangerous firearm in his room. The man in the suit analyzes the pistol and comments that the young man has the perfect talent for creating big problems in the city. With a penetrating gaze from behind the lenses of his glasses, the man calls the blonde guy's attention seriously. The aggressor tries to react, demanding bravely to know the identity of the man in the suit who invaded his secret apartment. The room continues to be messy, with the recording equipment focused on the bed, where the villain was rehearsing his steps. The man in the suit shows a round metal emblem with a mysterious star symbol representing the network. He reveals that he is part of a secret and very profitable group called the Network that operates in the shadows of society. The recruiter cocks the pistol, warning with a smile on his face that his job is to recruit young talents like him. He confesses that he watched with much interest all the public controversies caused by Jang Hyun-soo's actions. The man in the suit formally proposes a partnership, inviting the guy to work together with his secret organization. Back to the present, the protagonist stares at him in the dark apartment and asks if he wants the girl that much. The villain in the robe insists on the shooting bet, proposing that the winner gets the young woman as the grand prize. Roo Kong-min keeps his black pistol held firmly and warns with seriousness about the danger of his weapon. The hero stares at him with coldness, guaranteeing that his real weapon is highly lethal and will kill the rival with a single shot. The aggressor just smiles from the corner without showing the slightest fear of the death threat made by the protagonist in the living room. The hero narrows his blue eyes with a deadly look, ready to pull the trigger if the villain continues with the delusions. The blonde villain challenges the protagonist, touching his forehead to the barrel of the pistol and ordering him to shoot if he has the courage. He mocks, asking if the hero is afraid now that he needs to pull the trigger for real to kill him there. Without hesitating, the hero pulls the trigger and makes a precise shot right in the middle of the aggressor's forehead, who falls backward. The guy's body falls backward on the floor with a violent thud while he lets out an ear-piercing scream of pain. The aggressor rolls on the floor, holding his head in agony, while the hero notices something very strange about the shot. Upon checking the weapon, the protagonist is confused to note that, in reality, the cartridge contained only rubber bullets. The blonde guy complains of pain in his forehead, explaining that he bought the ammunition over the internet, thinking they were real bullets. He laments on the floor, realizing he was deceived in the purchase, and that weapon would never be truly lethal in the duel. But in a quick movement, the aggressor puts his hand inside his black jacket to look for something else secret. He stands up, furious, and draws a second hidden pistol, admitting that going through that shame was humiliating. He makes a quick shot for real, but the hero dodges the projectile with ease using his absurd reflexes. The protagonist analyzes the situation with coldness, commenting that his attack was a movement a little too obvious. The blonde guy keeps shooting non-stop while the hero dodges, sliding across the floor with extreme agility. Upon watching the rival's weapon closely, the protagonist wonders if that is just a regular toy pistol. The real shot destroys a toy on the table, and the hero thinks that children shouldn't play with dangerous things. The aggressor praises the perfect aim of the pistol, commenting that it was clearly modified by a real professional. He keeps shooting with fury while the hero dodges and praises mentally the perfect calibration of that weapon. The blonde guy curses irritably upon missing the shots, while the hero analyzes the crimes that were committed with that pistol. The protagonist points out that, despite all the crimes committed, the rival never spent a single day in prison. With a slight smile on his face, the hero demands that the aggressor answer his main question once and for all. He wants to know what is the criminal group that is covering up his actions and cites the name, the Network. Directly, the mysterious criminal organization known as the Network operates in a totally secret way and is shrouded in mysteries. They utilize problematic students spread all over the country, acting in independent and isolated cells. The group is composed of several small factions, which makes the task of discovering the true leadership impossible. The decentralized structure of the organization prevents the police from being able to track and dismantle the criminal scheme. Even in the face of so many difficulties, the protagonist swears to himself that he will hunt down and destroy every member of the network. He observes the secret investigation documents and the plane ticket he bought to start his real hunt. The hero focuses on the notes about his target, knowing that he needs to infiltrate that school to get the answers. The main objective of the protagonist is to find and eliminate the main target who leads this secret organization. Suddenly, he is pulled from his thoughts by an irritable voice, asking why he is traveling like that. The blonde guy approaches, staring at the protagonist in an aggressive way, and asks if he finds something funny about him there. This blonde thug is in fact a member of the criminal organization that the protagonist discovered after investigating. The aggressor is furious, complaining that jerk first stole his girl and now wants to use him as a stepping stone. The protagonist dodges the blow, while the villain shouts that he is being mocked and threatened by that meddler. The hero looks sideways with coldness while he prepares to act against the threats of the uncontrolled criminal. With total tranquility, the hero just agrees with his head while he watches the aggressor's despair in front of him. The blonde guy points the pistol and makes one more shot in the direction of the protagonist. In the middle of the dark apartment, the criminal cocks the weapon with a murderous look, warning that his destiny is to die once and for all. But the protagonist emerges right behind him with a pistol pointed, leaving the villain completely shocked by the speed. A quick spray of shots hits the aggressor, who lets out a scream of pain upon being targeted repeatedly. He groans in pain with his face full of purple marks caused by the non-lethal projectiles fired by the hero. The protagonist keeps the pistol pointed with extreme firmness. After neutralizing the opponent's attack completely, the aggressor's cell phone falls on the floor with the screen all shattered, showing the end of that secret broadcast. The hero opens a can of soda calmly and asks if he really is going to keep acting in that ridiculous way. He drinks a sip of the cold, while calling the aggressor a failed criminal without showing any concern, fallen on the floor. The blonde guy tries to stutter, saying that that he is not the villain of the story while the hero stares at him, confused. The guy insists, with tears in his eyes, that he is not the true villain of that terrible situation there. A memory of the past shows the dark and silent room, where all that sick obsession of his began. The blonde young man used to stay locked in the dark, staring obsessively at the cell phone screen while calling out the girl's name. The screen shows dozens of messages ignored by her, where he begged desperately for an answer or a call. The guy made a face of pure hate, madness upon realizing that he was being totally ignored by the young woman. He remembered when she smiled beside him and that she thought his style was very cool in the past. The young man held the toy gun tightly, remembering that she praised his posture when he shot at the range. He spent nights awake on the floor, surrounded by toy guns, practicing tirelessly to impress her. He saw himself only as an unhappy victim who was cowardly betrayed by the only person he loved in the world. The hero drinks another sip of the soda and ironizes, saying that that version of the story is really very creative. The aggressor continues murmuring about his sick love on the floor, while the scared girl watches everything, cornered in the corner. He points the black pistol back with his eyes, covered by the shadows, and repeats that he loves her for real. The hero continues drinking his cola with a look of total boredom, while listening to that bizarre declaration of love. The young woman shrinks even more against the wall, desperate with the disturbing words of her former pursuer. She lowers her head, horrified to hear the maniac shout that he is completely crazy and obsessed with her. The villain raises the weapon to the top, crying with anger while he bellows with all his forces that he loves her too much. Suddenly, the criminal puts his hand inside the black leather jacket with an extremely dark expression. He draws two pistols at the same time and shouts that if he cannot have her, no one else in the world will be able to either. The barrel of the firearm is pointed directly at the head of the defenseless girl, who is without an exit on the floor. The hero finally loses patience and asks him to wait upon realizing the madness that the guy is about to commit there. The psychopath cries and gives a bizarre smile, saying that they will get married in the next life anyway. Several violent and ear-piercing shots start echoing through the apartment, breaking the silence of the night. The flash of the shots illuminates the dark living room in a quick and devastating sequence of consecutive shots. The stray projectiles completely shatter the window glass and spread shards all over the kitchen floor. The violent shots pierce the walls and destroy the apartment furniture in the middle of that insane shootout. Several empty bullet casings fall on the floor, shining under the weak light, while the noise of the shots continues. The aggressor unloads the two pistols completely, leaving only the barrel of the weapons, letting out smoke. He breathes panting and scared upon looking forward and seeing the result of his shots of anger. The energy efficiency seal shines on the side of the refrigerator that served as an improvised shield at the time of the shootout. The hero held the heavy refrigerator door to protect the girl and comments that Korean appliances are the best. The young woman opens her eyes slowly, very relieved upon realizing that the metal shield blocked all the villain's bullets. The hero stares at the aggressor from behind the refrigerator while the villain, in shock, asks who the heck he is for real. The aggressor asks, surprised, why the protagonist risked his life in the shootout just to save that girl. The villain bites his lips and stays totally silent, trying to understand the motivation behind that heroic attitude. Suddenly, the blonde young man widens his eyes upon deducing something totally different and bizarre in his sick mind. The young woman is also confused and apprehensive without knowing what is going through the head of that dangerous cornered aggressor. He stares at the messy room and asks if they were doing something intimate before he invaded her apartment. The villain makes a bizarre face of jealousy and insanity, refusing to believe that the two possess a real relationship. With a cold and penetrating look, the hero asks if the criminal really wants to know the truth about that situation. He pretends shyness and comments sarcastically that he feels a little embarrassed to talk about that out loud. The aggressor loses total control and runs runs in the direction of the protagonist, shouting swear words with pure hate on his face. But the hero reacts in a blink of an eye, delivering a surgical and precise blow to disarm the uncontrolled villain. The criminal's pistol shatters completely into several pieces of plastic in the air, leaving the aggressor without reaction. The blonde young man focuses his look in a state of shock, without understanding how his weapon was destroyed so easily like that. Drops of blood start dripping rapidly on the floor beside his foot. While he starts to feel an absurd pain, he screams, desperate, holding his injured hand upon realizing that he had his finger cut in a brutal way during the hero's attack. The hero puts his finger on his lips, asking for silence with a cold smile, and warns that the neighbors might end up listening. He threatens to cut the guy's entire hand above the wrist, in case the criminal doesn't shut his mouth immediately in that room. The protagonist draws a real pistol and starts to list coldly the technical specifications of that lethal weapon. The aggressor trembles with terror upon hearing the scary words and realizes that he is dealing with a real monster for real. The hero points the metal barrel directly at him, warning that the next shots will be with real and lethal ammunition. The criminal turns pale with fear, holding his bleeding finger upon realizing that the situation took a totally deadly turn. He begs desperately for his own life, crying out loud while he stares at the dark mouth of the weapon pointed at him. The metallic noise of the weapon being cocked echoes through the dark room, destroying any hope of mercy. Taken by despair, the blonde young man turns around and flees, running as fast as he can to save his own life. The hero watches the rival's flight with disdain, commenting that he took quite some time to finally decide to run. The apartment now becomes totally empty and silent after all that terrible confusion and shootout in the dark kitchen. He adjusts the hood of his dark jacket, thinking that the criminal should have tried to flee much earlier, before being cornered. The scene changes to the busy and illuminated streets of the city, where people walk quietly without noticing anything. A colorful sign decorated with pink tones welcomes the customers of a busy themed maid cafe. A young woman dressed in maid clothes and cat ears invites the pedestrians in a cute way to enter the establishment. The blonde guy continues running, terrified, and ends up bumping violently into the girl, who was doing the promotion on the sidewalk. He pushes her roughly, shouting irritably at the girl with cat ears, while she lets out a scream of surprise. The criminal complains with anger while he looks back, not able to stand that relentless pursuit in the middle of the street anymore. The protagonist's firm steps continue following the fugitive closely, keeping the same constant and scary rhythm. He catches sight of the hero in a hood and in the middle of the crowd and screams, desperate, asking how long he will be pursued like that. The people around start to look confused at the blonde guy, who screams alone in the middle of the busy intersection. The criminal bellows with all his forces in the middle of the avenue, asking what he did so wrong to deserve that. He shouts, crying that he was the only one used by a hypocrite girl and insists that he is the true victim of the whole story. The villain cries profusely at the top of his lungs, questioning why only he is getting the bad end and being punished so unfairly. The hero approaches quietly, looking at the cell phone screen and comments that the rival still has plenty of energy to scream. The protagonist looks at the huge electronic panel of the building and is thankful that they arrived at their destination before expected. He clicks on a device's screen to start the broadcast of a video on the huge external digital screen of the commercial building. The blonde aggressor crosses the pedestrian crosswalk, running in the direction of the illuminated skyscraper in the center of that busy avenue. Suddenly, the gigantic screen of the building displays the intimate and embarrassing video of the criminal, calling everyone's attention on the street. The young man stops running immediately and looks to the top, totally paralyzed upon recognizing his own video on the building screen. The pedestrians start to murmur, confused, and point to the big screen, thinking it's strange the sudden change of commercial ad. Everyone on the street starts to laugh and make jokes upon seeing the ridiculous poses and the bizarre mannerisms of the blonde guy on the big screen. He hears a person comment, laughing, that he seems too small and feels the worst public humiliation of his life there on the street. The aggressor tries to stutter, desperate, while everyone around continues looking and pointing directly at his pants. He bends over, holding his pants, and shouts, desperate, to the crowd, trying to deny the joke about his anatomical size. The criminal bellows that, on that day, he just wasn't feeling very well, while the hero watches him from afar with total contempt. The protagonist lets out an ironic laugh to the side, while the blonde rival realizes, horrified, the origin of that embarrassing video. He points, trembling, to the cell phone in the hero's hand and asks in panic if it was really him who planned all of that there. The pedestrian signal starts to flash, indicating that only 2 seconds remain for safe crossing at the intersection. The traffic light finally changes to the red color, blocking completely the passage of pedestrians through the avenue. Blind with fury, the aggressor runs in the middle of the street, shouting crazily for the hero to delete that humiliating video from the big screen. But suddenly, a violent thud echoes through the place while the guy is hit dead, on by something terrible by surprise. A huge real cargo truck runs over the criminal, throwing his body far away on the pedestrian crosswalk. All the witnesses around watch the scene with widened eyes and put their hands on their mouths in a complete state of shock. While the guy is thrown on the asphalt, the bizarre video of him on the big screen continues running and being broadcast to everyone. The big screen displays the final moment of the video, while the truck with the broken windshield stops. Right after the accident, the pedestrians start to scream in panic and run to see if the blonde guy is still alive after that brutal collision. The hero watches the turmoil generated from afar and thinks, thoughtfully, that an accident of that gravity was not part of his plan. He closes his eyes for a moment, maintaining calm while he decides what will be his next step in the face of that situation. The hero simply goes away while the people around scream, desperate, to call the ambulance right away. On the following day, the sun rises, illuminating the huge courtyard and the modern buildings of that city's high school. Through the hallways, the students already start to spread gossip very quickly about the terrible event of the previous night. A boy with short hair tells his friend, astonished, that slacker Jang Hyun-soo was run over by a truck. Another student, sitting in the classroom, replies that he already saw everything and that the subject is booming on all social media. He displays the photo of the incident on his cell phone, commenting that the guy's mind must have broken totally after that shame. The young people mock, laughing out loud, and comment that, finally, their school managed to produce a famous celebrity on the internet. Listening to all that futile conversation, the young woman with black hair turns irritated and calls the boys complete idiots. She complains alone that wretch decided to go to her house right on the day he ended up being run over on the street. The young woman massages her temples, letting out a groan of pain, and complains that her head has been throbbing a lot since that night. She tries to remember the previous night, but everything seems confused and blurred, as if the memories had been erased suddenly. The girl only remembers having screamed desperately for help before fainting completely in her apartment. In the middle of her thoughts, she remembers vaguely the silhouette of someone commenting about the resistance of a refrigerator. The young woman feels that, in some way, she heard Ryu Kang-min's striking voice protecting her in the middle of all that confusion. Meanwhile, in a completely dark and mysterious setting, a shadowy silhouette starts to approach slowly. The figure walks silently in the middle of the darkness, appearing to be an intimidating presence and very well dressed in a suit. The mysterious man lets out a slight murmur of doubt upon realizing that the person in front of him is already starting to react. He takes firm steps in the direction of the protagonist and asks in a calm way if he has already managed to wake up from his deep sleep. He comments with tranquility that the place is a true mess, but warns that the guy doesn't need to worry about that. The man with dark glasses and a suit reveals with a smile that his team is already taking care of cleaning all the dirt of the place. He adjusts his clothing in a very elegant and intimidating way while he prepares to give quite disturbing news. The mysterious man reveals with coldness that they are cleaning the entire crime scene, and also the memories of that girl back in the classroom. The young woman rests her chin on her hand, thoughtful, feeling that there is something extremely wrong with her mind. The day ends, and the dark night soon falls over the peaceful neighborhood, which remains illuminated only by some lit lamp posts. The protagonist walks calmly through the dark alley, carrying a plastic shopping bag. After leaving a local store, he lets out a deep sigh of fatigue, complaining about the lack of convenience stores that sell cigarettes in that region. The hero complains about his current age of 17 and thinks that he should have asked to reincarnate at 24. He grumbles about spending 3 whole years without smoking and complains that he will still have to fulfill the mandatory military service. Suddenly, an unknown and polite voice emerges behind him in the alley, greeting the hero, who turns, confused. Right away, the elegant man in a suit and shining glasses is standing there in the shadows and calls the hero directly by his real name. The newcomer apologizes in an ironic way for looking like a suspicious guy talking to a young student in the middle of the night. The man fiddles with his suit, displaying a mysterious brooch, while he mentions the incident of the big screen invasion of the previous night. With a quite enigmatic smile, he extends his arm to deliver a black card and confesses that he was very impressed. He hands over the mysterious card with a metallic symbol and reveals formally that he is part of a group called the Network. The protagonist stares at the card in his hands, thinking that the invitation from that organization arrived at the perfect moment. The hero gives a slight victorious smile to the side upon realizing that his whole plan to attract the criminal group worked. He used the invasion of the big screen and the humiliation of the former member to make the leadership of the Network come to him in the shadows. He thought that as soon as the embarrassing video went viral on the internet, his plan would work immediately. The man in the suit smiles, saying that the organization is always on the lookout for talented young people who know how to create controversy. The hero smiles, holding his plastic bag, and comments in a convinced way that he possesses an excellent sense for these things. He analyzes that the standard method of investigation would be trying to infiltrate slowly into one of the several cells of the network. The hero knows that entering as a low-level member and rising level by level would take a lot of time in the mission, but doing all this traditional infiltration step by definitely doesn't match his agile style. He perceives that, in the structure of that faction, the recruiter needs to be someone who belongs directly to the leadership. The hero knows that the recruiter has direct contact with the boss, but the man in the suit looks away, pretending he doesn't understand. But the recruiter is surprised and tense upon seeing that the hero leans something hard and heavy against his chest in the dark. The protagonist points the pistol from inside the plastic bag and demands, coldly, that the man take him to his boss. The scene changes to a beautiful and luxurious room, decorated with sliding wooden doors in a traditional Korean style. In the corner of the room, there is a huge and delicate arrangement with several colorful flowers, exuding a pleasant aroma in the environment. A dazzling blonde woman wearing black lace lingerie carefully cuts the flowers with big scissors. She holds a red hibiscus flower very closely, but suddenly stops the cutting movement upon hearing a noise. The blonde woman moves her beautiful and penetrating gray eye with suspicion upon realizing that someone entered her room. She looks back with a serious and attentive expression while flower petals fall delicately around her face. To her surprise, the hero is sitting very loosely on the windowsill beside a travel suitcase. The beautiful blonde woman remains totally calm and asks in a rough way who sent him to invade her chambers in that way. She narrows her shining gaze and analyzes closely the posture of that young and mysterious intruder who stared at her without fear. In a quick movement, the blonde throws the heavy metal scissors onto the wooden coffee table, making a dry sound. Next, she makes an extremely fast surprise attack, throwing a sharp blade directly against the hooded hero. The big metal scissors cut the wind at an absurd speed, flying directly in the direction of the boy's face. But with perfect reflexes, the hero uses a blue Korean passport to block the scissors, which remain embedded in the document. The protagonist approaches quietly to the table while the blonde sits on the sofa, staring at the intruder with attention. He removes the scissors from the passport very calmly, commenting that it was a tremendous stroke of bad luck for her to miss that blow. She just gives a smile to the side, showing that she is not even a little intimidated by the threatening presence of the young man man there. The metal scissors are left aside on the table of wood, beside the fallen branches of that beautiful vase of flowers. The hero stretches, pretending fatigue while he holds the damaged passport and comments about the damage she caused him. He throws the passport, all damaged, onto the living room table, showing the photo of his new fake student identity. The document brings his very serious photo, revealing the fictional name Ryu Kang-min and his supposed Korean date of birth. The protagonist leans very close to the blonde woman's ear, whispering in an intimidating and mysterious way in the shadows. In the corner of the luxurious room, a light green butterfly rests quietly on the yellow petals of a delicate flower. The tense atmosphere dominates the entire room, while the two continue talking face to face under the illuminated wooden ceiling. The hero focuses his gaze in a very cold and decided way, demanding an immediate answer about what she plans to do next. The blonde starts to talk about her past in the United States while she fiddles calmly with her arrangements of expensive flowers. She holds a beautiful red rose with the tip of her fingers, explaining the mission she received to eliminate a Korean citizen. The protagonist suddenly steals the rose, putting it in his mouth in a cheeky way, leaving the blonde woman quite irritated. She lets out a deep sigh of disdain and opens a wooden drawer of the coffee table to take something very important. The woman removes an official document from the drawer and hands the paper with disinterest for the young protagonist to read there. He picks up the confidential paper and is left with a totally shocked expression upon reading the secret information contained in it. The document brings confidential data with the official logo of the criminal organization, the network, and its exact current location. The secret dossier reveals the complete map of South Korea and brings the dark photo of his next target to be eliminated in the mission. The protagonist joins all the pieces of the puzzle in his mind, remembering the beginning of his infiltration at school. He holds the sheet with firmness and warns with seriousness that it is still very early for them to draw any hasty conclusions. The blonde woman takes back the beautiful red rose with affection, showing that she knows very well how to take care of her business. She feels the sweet perfume of the rose with closed eyes, maintaining her mysterious and extremely attractive posture on the sofa. The scene changes back to the dark street, illuminated by the light post where the hero cornered the scared recruiter of the network. The recruiter with glasses swallows hard upon feeling the barrel of the pistol pressed against his chest under the hero's silent aim. The protagonist demands one more time, with authority, that the man in the suit take him immediately to the hideout of their boss. The recruiter sees no other exit but to accept the order and starts to guide the hero through the darkness of that neighborhood. The man in the suit swallows hard and warns in panic that the protagonist really doesn't know who he is messing with for real. The hero just gives a mocking smile and asks in a sarcastic way if he should care about this silly threat. Suddenly, the protagonist makes a quick toy shot right in his face, leaving the man totally confused and scared. The man with glasses widens his eyes upon realizing that the weapon that was on his chest was, in reality, just an harmless toy. He lets out a scream of surprise in the middle of the silent alley upon noting that he was deceived in an extremely silly way by the young man. The man cleans the small suction cup marks from his gray jacket, indignant at the impertinence of the hooded boy in front of him. The hero holds the plastic pistol with a smile and warns that his real weapon is very well hidden on his back. The protagonist points jokingly to his own temple, showing that he knows how to be very dangerous when the situation requires it. He stares at him with a penetrating and scary look, making it clear that the next game might be quite lethal. But instead of getting irritated, the recruiter starts to laugh out loud and gives a wide smile of satisfaction in the face of the cheeky young man. The man in the suit approaches in a friendly way and asks for the boy to lower the pistol so that they can talk better. He gesticulates in a calm way and guarantees that the job proposal he made previously continues to stand for the hero. The two continue standing, talking under the yellowish lighting of the light post of that peaceful commercial neighborhood. The protagonist listens to everything in silence with an analytical look, trying to discover if the recruiter really took the bait. The man in the suit takes a firm step forward, approaching the hero, even more to close the business deal right there. He adjusts his glasses with an enigmatic smile and whispers something confidential in the ear of the young man in the middle of the dark alley. The hero focuses his look sideways upon listening to the valuable information given by the man about the whereabouts of the group's leadership. But suddenly, he moves away, complaining that the man's voice is very loud, and starts to massage his left ear with pain. The boy makes a drama, saying that he almost went deaf, but agrees happily with the conditions of the mysterious secret job. The night advances silently, and the lights of the windows of the neighboring buildings start to go out one by one on the peaceful avenue. The two finish the conversation and start to walk in opposite directions, disappearing slowly in the middle of the darkness of that street. The hero watches the man in the suit move away, while he wonders what will be the true identity of that mysterious leader. The protagonist walks back home with his real pistol very well hidden in the back of his jeans pants. He narrows his look, thoughtful, planning every detail of his infiltration before the group decides to make the next move. The recruiter adjusts proudly the round metal brooch with the star emblem on his elegant work jacket. He follows his path under a purple and mysterious aura, quite satisfied for having recruited such a promising and bold young man. The scene changes to the empty and dark living room of a traditional Korean residence, completely enveloped in silence. In the room next door, computer and several papers scattered across the table show that someone was investigating something inside there. Inside the dark wardrobe, the impeccable high school uniform is hung and ready to be used on the following day. The jacket brings the official badge with the fictional name Ryu Kang-min, indicating that the first contact with the network was established on the work table. The military notebook displays graphs of audio frequencies recorded secretly during the investigation. On the opposite wall, a huge metal panel displays dozens of real and highly dangerous pistols and assault rifles there. Several official rescue and security uniforms are hung in the closet, showing the ease he has to disguise himself. The cork board is full of photos of buildings and secret documents interconnected by several red wool lines. The hero works tirelessly, sitting in front of the huge panel of clues, analyzing every detail of that criminal network. He starts to unwrap a small chocolate egg with the tip of his fingers, making a slight noise of crumpled paper. The hero watches the candy, thoughtful, eating a piece of chocolate while he tries to relax a little, the mind tired from work. The colorful laminated paper is left aside beside an illustrated flyer that teaches how to assemble the toy that comes inside the egg. Upon breaking the chocolate, he finds the small colorful plastic capsule that hides the surprise gift in its interior. Back at the traditional residence, drops of sweat run down the beautiful neck of the blonde who continues exercising in the room. The beautiful blonde woman demonstrates incredible body flexibility while she performs a difficult yoga posture on the mat. The sun enters through the big windows, illuminating the huge wooden hall where she performs her morning routine of exercises. She breathes panting, maintaining total concentration while drops of sweat shine on her clear skin under the sun's light. The rustic ceiling with exposed wooden beams gives a very special and elegant charm to that luxurious yoga room. The blonde woman focuses her look with seriousness and absolute determination, demonstrating that she is in her best physical form to act. Meanwhile, the man in the suit smiles coldly in front of the big panel with the official logo of the organization, the network. The blonde performs one more impeccable hip flex, showing all the strength and agility of her trained assassin body. Suddenly, she hears a message in her wireless headset and changes expression immediately upon receiving new orders. The investigation dossier brings several confidential information about the money laundering schemes that the network carries out. The cork board also displays the complete map of the city's subway lines, with several strategic points circled in red. In the center of the cork board, there is the mysterious photo of a black silhouette that represents the true hidden boss of the network. All the clues and connections of the investigation lead directly to this mysterious leader who controls everything in the shadows. The hero focuses his tired look on the silhouette photo, knowing that unmasking this boss is the final objective of his mission. He squeezes the small plastic capsule of the chocolate egg with force to open it and see the surprise gift at once. Upon opening the packaging, he comes across a small articulated plastic figure dressed in a stylish leather jacket. The toy has the serious expression and the spiked hair, appearing to be a hilarious miniature version of Jang Hyun-soo. The scene changes to the huge and modern complex of the city's university hospital, where the injured blonde was admitted. On the hospital room television, the newscast displays news about the big hacking scandal of the previous night. Beside the IV drip, the blonde watches the news and asks, revolted, if the police still haven't managed to capture the protagonist. He appears completely bandaged and wearing a cervical collar with a hilarious expression of despair and pure humiliation. The supposed doctor in a white lab coat remains standing beside the bed, watching the news on television in silence. The professional asks in a cold way for the patient to shut his mouth while he fiddles calmly with the boy's IV bag. The injured blonde swallows hard, looking up, feeling an enormous suspicion and fear in the face of the attitude of that doctor. The aggressor trembles with terror upon perceiving the dark look from behind the hair of that mysterious doctor in the dark room. The tense silence dominates the entire room, while the intruder in the white lab coat continues, standing in an intimidating way. He gives a quite enigmatic and cruel smile, showing that he is not there in the hospital to carry out any treatment. The intruder prepares to inject a mysterious substance directly into the IV tube that is connected to the boy. He removes the syringe with a red liquid from the loud pocket in an extremely calculating and cold way in the room. Without any hesitation, he starts to apply the strange reddish liquid in the IV tube of the defenseless patient. The man smiles in the shadows, revealing white teeth while he injects the lethal dose under the despair of the injured aggressor. The red liquid starts to descend rapidly through the plastic hose in the direction of the needle embedded in the blonde's hand. The boy asks, trembling with terror, if he really is a real doctor and tries to move away in some way on the bed. The reddish substance mixes completely with the IV drip, leaving the liquid with a very scary and lethal color. He widens his eye of despair upon realizing the dark color of the liquid that is about to enter directly into his veins. The morning light enters through the big window of the hospital, illuminating the busy big city that starts to wake up out there. The intruder watches the young man suffering on the bed with total coldness, maintaining his elegant and silent posture in the room. The empty syringe is left on the metal counter as the only clue to that terrible and cruel silent attack there. The fake professional smiles from the corner, adjusting the drip of the IV drip to accelerate the entry of the lethal substance into the boy. The blonde stutters, horrified, upon realizing that his left hand is firmly handcuffed to the metal grid of the hospital bed. He tries to stand up desperately, but is prevented by the strong metal chain that holds him to the structure of the bed. The steel handcuff shines under the window light, showing that he is completely trapped and defenseless in the face of that threat. The aggressor makes force, shaking the chain with despair, while he screams for help in the attempt to free himself from there. He bellows, calling the man in the suit a crazy psychopath, while he cries and drools from pure terror with the imminent end of his life. The fake doctor just rests his chin on his hand, thoughtful, watching the young man's despair without showing any compassion. The boy makes so much force to try to break the steel handcuff that his injured hand starts to bleed in a concerning way. The intruder smiles in the dark, revealing himself to be a high-ranking leader of the network. With an extremely intimidating red look, the blonde bleeds through his nose and cries in agony upon realizing that he was discarded like useless trash by the organization itself. His desperate fight to try to escape continues, agitating the metal bed in the middle of that silent room. His hand starts to tremble violently due to the fast and devastating effect of the red substance in his organism. The lethal poison finally enters completely into his veins, causing the boy to lose all strength to resist. The assassin watches the now totally immobile body on the hospital bed, knowing that his terrible mission was accomplished. The day dawns sunny and busy at the commercial intersection, with several cars and buses circulating through the big avenue. The protagonist focuses his serious and penetrating look in the middle of the street, planning the next step of his dangerous hunt for the network. He holds firmly the black card with the emblem of the criminal faction, knowing that this object is his passport to the truth. The hero remains standing on the sidewalk, analyzing the surroundings with attention, while he waits for the arrival of his contact. Suddenly, a young man in a gray jacket and hood approaches him from behind in a silent and calm way on the building's sidewalk. The gray-haired boy gives a very sympathetic and friendly smile, demonstrating that he was waiting for that meeting. The two start to talk quietly on the spacious sidewalk near the big display window of that famous designer store. The hero stares at him with suspicion while the young gray-haired boy maintains a serene expression and a slight smile on his face. The protagonist fixes his look in a serious and penetrating way, trying to discover the true intentions of that mysterious boy. The young gray-haired boy presses the button of the car key, making a sound signal of unlocking in the parking lot. The hero turns with widened eyes upon seeing a white and giant luxury car shining right in front of him on the sidewalk. He fixes his look, completely paralyzed with shock, without being able to believe the level of wealth of his new partner. In a comical way, the hero moves his face closer and starts to lick the famous metal statuette of the hood of that luxury vehicle. The gray-haired partner is left completely embarrassed by the bizarre and exaggerated reaction of the protagonist upon seeing the expensive car. The luxurious white vehicle advances at high speed through the busy city road, starting the trip of the two. Sitting on the leather seat, the protagonist starts to shout with joy and excitement while he enjoys that expensive trip. He shakes all animated, commenting that he has never ridden in such an incredibly comfortable vehicle in his whole life. The car passes by a green sign on the highway, indicating that they are already entering the Gyeonggi region in Korea. The protagonist gives a convinced smile and gesticulates in an animated way while he makes grandiose plans about his destination. The gray-haired boy just smiles from the corner in a friendly way. Although he seems a little tired of putting up with all that energy, the luxury car continues its fast and silent trip through the empty lanes of the highway, advancing toward the final destination. The vehicle accelerates even more, raising dust on the asphalt, and disappears quickly in the curve of that intermunicipal road. The driver performs an agile and precise overtaking, passing very close to the bus that was transiting through the right lane. But suddenly, the climate changes and the hero focuses his look in a very cold way, remembering the real danger that awaits them ahead. The young gray-haired boy gives a mysterious smile, suggesting that he also possesses his own secrets to reveal. He lowers his head with an enigmatic look, maintaining calm while his hands rest quietly on his lap in the car. The hero remains in silence, watching the movement of his partner with a very attentive and extremely analytical look. Next, the hero gives a slight confident smile, showing that he is very well prepared for any type of surprise. The travel partner returns the friendly smile, demonstrating to have total confidence that their partnership will work very well. The protagonist turns a little backward in the car seat, maintaining his posture attentive to any suspicious movement. He lowers his head for a moment, putting his thoughts in order while the car approaches closer and closer to the destination. Suddenly, the protagonist shifts his look to the wrist of the gray-haired partner with an expression of extreme suspicion. He widens his eyes upon noting a very specific detail on the partner's wristwatch that leaves him totally intrigued. The hero focuses his vision with deep shock upon recognizing immediately that bizarre accessory from his investigation. The digital watch screen displays the exact time, revealing to be exactly the same model used by the assassin from the hospital. He raises his head, sweating cold with terror upon realizing that the dangerous assassin of the network was at his side the whole time. The gray-haired young man reveals a red and deadly look with a disturbing smile, confirming his true identity there.